Welcome back to my channel. I'm Joe with Smokin Joe's Pit Barbecue. On today's video, I'm going to be smoking up a Texas style brisket on my brand new pit barrel PBX. Stay tuned. All right, I got my Dow Strong knife roll right here. Let me select the knives that I'm using for this cook. This is my brand new 14-inch serrated slicer. So I'm going to be using this one later on in the cook. I'm also going to be using my 7-inch fillet knife and my chef's knife as well. All right, so here's the brisket that I'm going to be smoking today. This is an 18-pound brisket, and I paid $4.13 a pound, which was $74.55, and this is a USDA choice brisket. And when I take off the wrapper, I cut right over that decal because that's going to be coming off anyway. Now, since I am smoking this brisket on my brand new pit barrel PBX, or any UDS for that matter, it is a totally different trim than when I'm smoking it on my offset, okay? Now, I do want to remove a lot of this fat from the flat and also from the point. So I'm just going to start removing the fat from the top of the flat right here. And I don't save this fat for sausage making, but I will save the fat off of the point end. So I'm going to be taking this decal completely off. And continue to trim up the top of the flat. This 7-inch fillet knife from Dow Strong makes it really easy for trimming briskets. All right, so now I'm just going to grab my chef's knife and trim all 4 edges just to expose that fresher meat and get everything nice and straight. I'm also going to be taking a little bit off the front of the brisket. This is really thin and it'll burn up if you don't trim it. Obviously, this oxidized side, take a good 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch. And also round off this point section right here. All right, so as you can see, the brisket is starting to take shape. Next thing I'm going to do is just round off these corners right here. Just draw a line first. Just like that. And go ahead and trim that off. And I do make a lot of sausage, so these trimmings do not go to waste. All right, so before I flip this brisket and trim that fat cap a little bit, I'm going to be taking this fat completely off and trimming down into the flat just a little bit. One thing you got to remember is that this cook is going to be a little bit hotter and a little bit faster than my offset smoker, so this fat really doesn't have enough time to render like when you're smoking on an offset smoker. Okay, so now I'm starting to expose this fat seam right here. This is what I want to take off without digging into that flat. Just start to remove a lot of this fat right here. All right, so what I'm going to do now is partially separate the flat from the point And all you got to do is follow this fat seam. Try to stay right in the middle. You can pull it apart. It almost pulls itself apart. Just take your time. If you take some meat off, just go down a little bit further into the fat. Real simple process. And again, I'm doing this because this is going to be a little faster cook than normal. Okay, just like that. And now I want to trim a lot of this fat from under that flat. It's been a long time since I smoked a brisket on the UDS, but now that Pit Barrel came out with their PBX, which is a full-size drum, I had to buy it. Now a UDS brisket has a totally different flavor than a traditional offset brisket. It's got more of a backyard, kind of a barbecue flavor. And I can't wait to share this recipe with you guys. All right, so this is exactly what you want right here. Just trim enough to expose some of that meat down onto your point. Now let's just trim up the fat cap and we'll be ready to go. Now I'm gonna be smoking this brisket fat cap down on my PBX because that's where the heat is gonna be concentrated on the bottom of this brisket, which is the fat cap. All right, so I've got the brisket completely trimmed up, as you can see right here. And the beautiful thing about trimming it this way is that it lays completely flat. So I'm just gonna apply a little bit of mustard as a binder. I've said this before, nothing that I have ever used works better than plain old mustard. Make sure you lather up your edges. Flip it over. Let's lather up that flat and this point. All right, so for the seasoning, I'm just using my homemade SPG, which is salt and pepper, a little bit of paprika, and some garlic powder as well, and just a tad bit of cumin. So season the brisket really well. Remember, it's a big piece of meat. All right, so I'm just gonna lift up this flat and season the bottom side just a little bit. Don't forget to season your edges because there are edge police out there watching. All right, I'm just gonna flip this, season up my fat cap, and we'll see you guys outside. All right, so there's my brand new Pit Barrel PBX. I'm gonna be using Jealous Devil charcoal, so let's get that started. So this is the charcoal that I'm using for today's cook. This is the Jealous Devil Max. These charcoal briquettes are extremely large. Check them out. Really nice and big. So I'm just gonna fill up my charcoal basket. So this is a 10-pound box and I probably used about 7 pounds of that charcoal. So I'm just gonna grab my blowtorch and get this charcoal lit. All right, so my Jealous Devil charcoal is lit up. I'm just gonna take a little bit of post oak that I had. I'm gonna lay it down on top of the charcoal to give it some nice smoke. Go ahead and install my grill grate on the bottom pegs. And here's our good looking brisket right in the middle of the grate. Now I'm already loving this PBX because you can cook these larger briskets. So I'm gonna go ahead and install my rods. And the PBX does come with 3 rods. All right, I've got my intake set up for my altitude. Put the lid on it. We'll check back in an hour. Stay tuned. All right, so the brisket has been smoking in my Pit Barrel cooker for 1 hour. What I'm gonna do now is take the lid off, pull the brisket out, take a look at the bottom, and flip it upside down with the flat down towards the fire. Now I did spin the grate every 20 minutes or so. Oh yeah, it's looking really nice. Check out that bottom side of that brisket after only 1 hour. So now the flat's gonna be down. Gonna put our rods back in there. I'm gonna put the lid on. We'll see you guys in 1 hour. Stay tuned. All right, so another hour has passed. Total cook time has been 2 hours. Let's take a look at the brisket. All right, so just in case you guys are wondering which gloves I'm using, these are the MagnaChef gloves. Really nice high temperature gloves. The nice thing about these gloves is you can connect them together like this and take your hands out safely or put them back on. So let's take a look at our brisket. Oh yeah, look at that good looking hot and fast brisket. So I'm gonna flip it with the fat side down again. I am using apple cider vinegar and water to spritz my brisket. And remember, I have been spinning the brisket every 20 minutes. It smells absolutely wonderful out here. Put enough spritz. All right, so I'm gonna put my rods back in. All right, put our lid back on. So just in case you guys are wondering what the internal temperature of the pit is, it has been running between 275 and 320. And when I first put the brisket on, it was at 320. Once I flipped the brisket, it was running about 285, 290. All right, so at this point, the brisket's gonna smoke for about another 45 minutes. I'll bring you guys back at that point. Stay tuned. All right, so 2 hours and 45 minutes into our cook and my PBX, and this is what the brisket looks like. The surface is nice and juicy. Just wanna make sure it comes out juicy on the camera. You have a little bit darker spots, but trust me, that is still nice and soft. So let's get an internal temperature right in the middle of the flat. I'm sitting at 169. This point should be higher. We're sitting at 182. So at this point, I'm gonna wrap the brisket in some foil. So I'm gonna be adding some beef broth mixed with some of this OPX1 from Cosmos Q into my foil. So I'm gonna add about 4 tablespoons of this Cosmos OPX1. This OPX1 is fantastic on its own and even on some ribs, but I like adding some to my broth when I wrap a brisket. About 8 ounces of beef broth. Give that a good shake. That's what it looks like right there. All right, so I've got my foil paper right here. And here's our gorgeous looking brisket. All right, so I'm gonna pour a little bit of my broth over the brisket, just a little bit. I'm gonna wrap it up nice and tight. Just like that. Fold one side over the top. So this is where the rest of my broth is gonna go, on this side, on this opening. So I've got my spare hands right here. Go ahead and pour it all in there. Perfecto. Then just fold your foil over the brisket like that. Make sure it's really nice and tight. This is gonna go back inside the PBX for 1 hour. We'll see you guys in a bit. All right, so the total cook time on our PBX brisket was 4.5 hours, and it probed really nice and tender. Let's take a look at it. I'm gonna let it rest for an hour before I slice into it, but that's what she looks like right there. Let's get an internal temperature. As you can see, it is probing like butter, okay? So let's get an internal temperature. We're sitting at about 203 degrees. And this point is mega tender, check that out. Internal temperature on that is 204 degrees on our point. So at this point, I'm just gonna cover it back up, let it rest for 1 hour, and I'll bring you guys back to slice into it. Stay tuned. All right, so the brisket has been resting for 1 hour after the 4.5 hour cook. Let's see how we did. Still plenty hot. There it is. All right, let's slice into our gorgeous looking brisket. As I mentioned earlier in the video, I am using my 14-inch Dell Strong serrated slicer. So let's just take a slice off the flat right here. Ooh, man, look at that smoke ring. I had to bust out my big cutting board because this was a big old brisket. Man, it is slicing really nice. I'm liking the serrated slicer. Ooh, juicy. She's making noises. All right, let's grab a slice and see what she looks like. Check that out. Beautiful looking smoke ring. This piece is still really hot. I'm just gonna take the rest of this flat off our point. I'm gonna cut the point into smaller cubes. At this point, you can cut them into cubes, put some barbecue sauce on them, and put them back inside your smoker for some nice burnt ends. But I really like me some cowboy burnt ends, which are no sauce. And that's what we have right here. Check out those nuggets right there. You'll see the competition guys do a lot of this. They will brush their slices with some jus and some sauce, because that's where a lot of the flavor is for these briskets. Check out this slice, super tender, really nice and hot. Let's give it a taste. All right, let's see how we did on our brisket. Let's try this flat first. Check that out. That smoke ring is really nice, super tender. Here we go. Man, this brisket is super tender and so full of flavor. You know, that's one thing I really missed about cooking on a drum smoker, is that good backyard brisket flavor. All right, let's try this cowboy burnt end. Again, no sauce, just the jus. Here we go. All right, let's see what my daughter thinks of my brisket. What you think, baby?
Really good and juicy.
No? Man, I have got me a mountain of these cowboy burnt ends. Check these out. I mean, look at this. I've got a mountain of these delicious burnt ends. Who wants some of these? If you guys are interested in getting yourself a PBX, make sure you check out the link inside my description box. There you can get 10% off of your pit barrel order. You're also going to find other links to a lot of the items that I use in this video, and a lot of them get you a really nice discount. I hope you guys enjoyed this brisket video. If this is your first time to my channel, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. And if you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up. Until next time, Joe with Smokin Joe's Pit Barbecue. See ya.